Welcome to Labyrinth, where we explore the psychology of shadows and the quiet ways our minds and bodies try to tell us the truth. Tonight we are entering a territory that looks harmless on the surface: kindness. Imagine a person who is always there for everyone, always understanding, always forgiving, always saying, "Don't worry about it, it's fine." Now imagine that same person lying awake at 3 in the morning, replaying conversations in their head, heart racing, jaw tight, feeling a mixture of resentment, guilt, and exhaustion they can't explain. On the outside, kindness. On the inside, a slow, silent burn. What if some of the kindest moments in our lives were never really about love at all, but about control? What if the people who helped us, supported us, forgave us, and understood us were also, consciously or not, keeping us on a leash? And what if we sometimes do the very same thing to others? Carl Jung once wrote that nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on a child than the unlived life of the parent. We could twist that slightly and say, nothing shapes us more than the kind of goodness that was demanded of us. In many families, goodness is not a virtue, it is currency. We learn very early that when we are pleasant, helpful, quiet, grateful, we are rewarded with approval, closeness, maybe even survival. When we resist, when we show anger or say no, we feel distance, shame, or punishment. That invisible contract does not disappear when we grow up. It simply becomes more sophisticated. On the surface, we are adults who choose to be kind, generous, understanding. Underneath, we can become people who are terrified of being disliked, who use niceness to keep others close, and who secretly resent the very people we are helping. Weaponized kindness is what happens when goodness becomes a strategy. Sometimes we are its victims. We meet someone who always offers help, always forgives, always sacrifices, and later uses that history as a chain to pull us back in line. After everything I've done for you, I was just trying to help. I'm the only one who has ever been there for you. These sentences are not about love. They are about power. But sometimes we are the ones speaking them, even if only silently in our heads. To really see this pattern, we need to go back to where most things start, the story of being a good child. Maybe we grew up in a house where anger was dangerous, where saying no meant doors slammed, silent treatments, or a cold distance at the dinner table. Maybe we heard phrases like, "Don't be ungrateful," "Good boys don't talk back," "Good girls don't make a scene," "If you really love me, you wouldn't upset me like this." On the surface, these sound like lessons about politeness. Underneath, they are lessons about survival. If we want connection, we must be convenient. In some families, one child becomes the easy one, the quiet helper who never causes trouble, the one who adapts to everyone's moods. In others, a child becomes the emotional sponge, absorbing the stress, fear, or sadness of the adults. They fetch tea, crack jokes, listen to complaints that were never meant for a child's ears. They are told they are so mature, so understanding, the only one I can talk to. It sounds like praise, but it is also a transfer of weight that was never theirs to carry. Culture and religion often reinforce this training. Many of us grew up hearing that we should turn the other cheek, love our enemies, always understand, always forgive, always be the bigger person. In schools, the quiet, compliant student is seen as the good one, while the angry or outspoken child is labeled a problem, even if the anger is a sane reaction to something unfair. At work, the people who never complain and always say, "Sure, I can do it," are praised as team players while their exhaustion is invisible. Erich Fromm, in Escape from Freedom, wrote about how people can submit to others in order to avoid the anxiety of true freedom. Sometimes our niceness is exactly that, a way to avoid the terror of standing alone as ourselves. When any trait becomes required for safety, it stops being free. It becomes a mask we wear even when our real face is burning. Over time, that mask fuses with our skin. We begin to believe that we are the mask, We say things like, "I'm just a nice person. I hate conflict. I can't stand seeing anyone upset." Sometimes that is true temperament, but often it is training, and our bodies usually know the difference long before our minds do. Many people who describe themselves as always understanding also describe certain physical patterns, a constant tightness in the stomach when they agree to things they don't want, chronic headaches after social gatherings where they spent the whole time listening to everyone's problems, restless nights after polite conversations where their real thoughts never left their throat. Some notice recurring throat infections or voice problems that seem to flare up whenever they are being strong for everyone else. This is not a medical diagnosis. It's not a simple cause and effect. It is a pattern. The body often becomes the stage where all the unsaid anger and unmade boundaries keep rehearsing their scenes. To understand weaponized kindness more clearly, we can walk through several principles, several rooms inside this labyrinth. The first principle is the contract of the good child. In this contract, we learn very early that love is conditional on our ability to be pleasant and helpful. Maybe we were praised most when we were quiet, obedient, or comforting to a stressed parent. Maybe we became the little therapist of the house, listening to adults complain, making them laugh, smoothing their moods. We might have been told we were mature for our age. Such a good kid, the only one who understands. It feels like a compliment, but underneath it is a trade. We give up our right to be messy, angry, or inconvenient in exchange for the role of the good one. As children, we rarely see this clearly. We just notice that when we cry too loudly, the room goes cold. When we say what we really think, someone is hurt or offended. When we put our own needs first, we are called selfish. So we learn to swallow tears, edit our words, and place our needs at the very bottom of the list. As adults, the contract of the good child turns into a script. We apologize for things that are not our fault. We say, "It's fine, don't worry about it," when it is not fine at all. We answer messages immediately because we are scared someone will feel ignored. We offer help before anyone even asks, not always because we want to, but because the silence of not offering feels unbearable. In relationships, we might become the one who always understands late replies, canceled puns, broken promises, because they're going through a lot. In workplaces, we become the person who quietly picks up everyone else's slack. On the other side of this contract, there are people, partners, friends, colleagues, even strangers, who sense, consciously or not, that we are trained this way. They learn that a certain tone of disappointment, a certain silence, a certain "I thought you were different" is enough to make us rush back into line. They may not be evil. Some are simply used to others cleaning up after them, but the dynamic is the same. Kindness becomes a leash. Our bodies often know when this contract is running. We notice that our chest feels heavy when we say yes instead of no, that our shoulders tense when we type another long, "don't worry about it" message, that our digestion acts up during periods when we are constantly pleasing others and never resting. Some people in this pattern notice recurring tension in the neck and upper back, or a stomach that feels like it is constantly bracing for impact. Again, this isn't about blaming ourselves for symptoms. It is about noticing that the body keeps a record of every time we betray ourselves in the name of being good. The second principle is the mask of the peacemaker. Many of us were trained to be the ones who keep the peace at any cost. Maybe we grew up between arguing parents or in a house where one person's anger could explode at any moment. So we learned to anticipate and soothe. Our nervous systems became like early warning radars. We could feel the tension before anyone raised their voice. We learned to crack a joke, change the subject, comfort, distract. We became experts in preventing scenes. As adults, this looks like being the friend who mediates every conflict, the partner who always understands both sides, the co-worker who smooths over the boss's outbursts and explains them to everyone else. On the surface, we look calm, reasonable, emotionally intelligent. Inside, we might be furious. We might replay arguments in our heads where we finally say what we really think. But in real life, we never do. Interestingly, research on emotional suppression and people-pleasing often shows higher levels of anxiety, depression, and burnout among those who feel responsible for everyone's feelings. We don't need exact numbers to feel this. We see it in everyday life. The ones who never make a fuss are often the ones who collapse later, seemingly out of nowhere. The mask of the peacemaker is not only about being used. Sometimes it is how we control. When we refuse to let any conflict surface, when we insist that everything must stay nice, we are also shaping reality. We might interrupt someone who is finally expressing anger with, "Let's not be negative," not because negativity is harmful, but because it threatens our role as the one who holds everything together. We might say, "I just want everyone to get along," when in truth, we are terrified of losing our position as the emotional center. Our niceness keeps us in power, but at the price of our authenticity. The body's language here often includes chronic fatigue, tension headaches, a jaw that aches from being clenched during every difficult conversation, a heart that races long after the argument ends, even if we barely said a word. Some people notice that before family gatherings or work meetings, they feel a wave of nausea or a pressure in the chest, as if their system already knows it is about to step into the role of mediator again. Once more, this is not a diagnosis. It is the body acting like a subtle alarm system, ringing every time we sacrifice our own truth to keep the peace. The third principle is the ledger of favors. This is where kindness openly becomes currency. Many of us have met someone like this. The person who is always helping, always giving rides, always lending money, always listening to long late-night calls. On the surface, they are saints. But over time, their kindness begins to feel heavy. Every favor goes into an invisible ledger, and eventually the bill arrives. It might show up as, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me," or "I dropped everything when you needed me, and now you can't even do this one thing." In that moment, we realize the truth. Those favors were not gifts. They were investments in control. The uncomfortable part is that sometimes we are the ones keeping the ledger. We notice ourselves thinking, "I cooked, I cleaned, I supported them, I listened to their problems, so why aren't they giving me what I want in return?" Instead of communicating our needs directly, we lean on our history of kindness as proof that we are owed. We become the gentle tyrant, never openly demanding, but always expecting. When people do not repay our silent debts, we feel betrayed, but we also feel strangely superior. "I would never treat someone the way they treated me," we say, sitting on our throne of unspoken resentment. The body often reacts with a mix of heaviness and agitation. There can be a tightness in the throat when we swallow our disappointment instead of naming it, a sinking feeling in the stomach when others don't repay unspoken debts, a chronic tiredness that comes from being on call for everyone all the time. Some people in these patterns notice flare-ups of tension in the lower back, or a sense that their body is carrying weight that doesn't belong to them. Others describe stress-related conditions, migraines, skin breakouts, digestive issues that worsen whenever they are deep in overgiving mode. Again, the point is not to say this causes that, but to listen. Our system is telling us that something in the way we relate is too heavy to carry. The fourth principle is the saint and the shadow. This is the psychological split that happens when our identity is built on being a good person. If our self-worth depends entirely on being kind, understanding, and forgiving, then any sign of anger, jealousy, or selfishness feels unbearable. We push it down. We say things like, "I'm not an angry person. I don't hold grudges. I always try to see the best in people." Again, sometimes that is temperament, but often it is denial. Jung called the rejected parts of ourselves the shadow, the qualities we refuse to see in ourselves, so we project them onto others. When we are attached to the image of being endlessly good, our shadow usually fills with rage, envy, and a hunger for power we pretend not to have. We start to see others as selfish, ungrateful, manipulative, but never look at the ways we might also be controlling through our goodness. In extreme cases, this dynamic can attract genuinely exploitative people, narcissistic or psychopathic personalities who feel no guilt about using others. It is important to distinguish psychopathy is not being mean. It is a severe lack of empathy and remorse. Most of us are not like that. Our problem is not too little empathy. It is empathy without boundaries. But when we refuse to acknowledge our own capacity for anger and control, we become easy prey for those who have no such illusions about themselves. And sometimes, without noticing, we become emotionally dangerous too, not because we feel nothing, but because we feel too much and never name it. We may explode after months of silence, saying things that cut deeper than any honest boundary would have. Or we might withdraw affection, go silent, become icy and polite, using our distance as a weapon while still claiming the moral high ground of being above drama. Our bodies often show the pressure of this split. Some people describe a constant pressure in the chest, a sense that they cannot take a full breath. Others notice muscle pain, migraines, or immune issues flaring during periods when they are being the strong one for everyone else. There can be a feeling that the body is both overactivated and numb at the same time, racing thoughts, but frozen expression. Again, there is no simple cause and effect statement here. It is more like a metaphor written in nerves and cells. When we refuse to give our anger a voice, the body sometimes starts speaking louder. Somewhere in the middle of this journey, it is worth pausing together. If parts of this feel uncomfortably familiar, know that we are not alone in it. This pattern is everywhere, in families, friendships, relationships, workplaces. And if we want to keep exploring it together, to keep walking deeper into this labyrinth of motives and masks, you can subscribe and put your comment. It helps this kind of slow, uncomfortable conversation survive in a world that prefers quick comfort. Let's keep going. The fifth principle is the choice behind the smile. This is where weaponized kindness begins to lose its power, and genuine kindness can be born. The real question is not, am I a good person, but am I choosing this or am I afraid not to? When we offer help, are we doing it because we truly want to support someone, or because we are terrified of what will happen if we say no? When we forgive, are we doing it from a place of inner freedom, or because we are scared that anger will make us just like them? When we listen to someone's problems for the 100th time, are we present, or are we secretly building a case file of all the ways they owe us? Our bodies can often tell the difference. Genuine yes usually feels like a quiet expansion. Maybe we are tired, but there is a sense of alignment, of this matters. Weaponized yes feels like contraction. The stomach sinks, the chest tightens, the jaw stiffens, even as our mouth says, of course, no problem at all. Over months and years, living in that contracted yes can contribute to a constant sense of pressure. Many people in these patterns describe waking up already tired, having strange waves of irritation at small things, or feeling a vague bitterness they can't explain. It is the emotional interest rate on all the silent loans our kindness has given out. On a deeper existential level, this is about control and fear of abandonment. Weaponized kindness is often a strategy to make sure people don't leave. If we are irreplaceable, endlessly helpful, impossibly understanding, maybe they will stay. Maybe they won't reject us. Maybe we won't have to face the terror of being alone with ourselves. But there is a cost. We end up surrounded by people who love the service we provide, not the person we are. The very strategy we use to prevent abandonment creates a quieter, more subtle loneliness. Genuine intimacy is only possible when both people are allowed to be imperfect, occasionally selfish, sometimes angry. When we are only allowed to be good, we are never really seen. The body often knows this before we do. That strange emptiness we feel after another day of being there for everyone might not be depression. It might be grief for the parts of us that never show up. The knot in the stomach before a conversation might not just be social anxiety. It might be the body's way of saying, please, not another performance. The shaking hands or tight throat when we try to say no might not mean we are weak. It might mean we are finally walking against decades of training. Sometimes the most radical act is not a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet sentence like, I can't do that, or I need time to think, or I'm not okay with this anymore. So how do we start untangling weaponized kindness in practical terms? The practice does not need to be dramatic. In fact, subtle is better. For the next few days, we can simply notice one thing: the moments when we say, it's okay, or no worries, or I don't mind, while some part of us clearly does mind. We don't have to change the behavior immediately. We just notice what our body does in those moments. Does the stomach clench? Does the breath shorten? Do the shoulders rise? Then, when we are alone, we ask a quiet question. What did I trade for harmony just now? Maybe we traded sleep for someone else's crisis. Maybe we traded self-respect for a small dose of approval. Maybe we traded honesty for the image of being the endlessly good one. We don't rush to fix it. We simply let the truth land. The next step is microscopic. Once a day, we choose one moment to be slightly less good and slightly more real. Not cruel, not explosive, just honest by one small degree. Maybe we say, I want to help, but I don't have the energy tonight. Maybe we say, I forgive you, but I'm still hurt and I need time. Maybe, for the first time, we admit to ourselves, I've been helping this person because it makes me feel needed, not because it is truly right for me. We might even write down one relationship where our kindness feels heavy and ask, if I stopped overgiving here, what am I afraid would happen? The answer to that question often points directly to the core fear that keeps the weapon in our hands. These are tiny moves on the outside and massive moves on the inside. Over time, something shifts. Kindness stops being armor and starts being a choice. Anger stops being a forbidden emotion and starts being information. Our bodies, slowly, may begin to feel less like battlegrounds of suppressed resentment and more like places we are allowed to inhabit. We may still get headaches, stomach knots, or sleepless nights. This is not a magic cure, but the difference is that now we know these sensations are not random enemies. They are signals, drawing our attention to where the old contracts are still running. In the end, weaponized kindness is just one corridor in a much larger labyrinth, the labyrinth of how we learn to survive love. Some of us hid behind strength, some behind intelligence, some behind productivity, and some behind goodness. But whatever mask we chose, the question remains the same. Are we living or are we performing? As we leave this episode, we can carry one last thought. Kindness that requires us to disappear is not kindness. It is self-erasure. And kindness that demands loyalty in return is not kindness. It is a quiet form of control. The work of the labyrinth is not to throw away our kindness, but to let it be guided by something deeper than fear. The more we allow our real anger, limits, and needs to exist, the less our goodness has to be a weapon, and the more it can become a genuine expression of who we are. The psyche rarely speaks in straight lines. It speaks in symbols, symptoms, and repeating patterns. Tonight we have walked through one of those patterns together. The labyrinth is still there. The question is not whether it exists, but whether we keep walking it blindly or finally start tracing its walls with open eyes.